So when you hear the name Bear Grylls, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably eating some crazy bug in the middle of nowhere, right? But what if I told you his real story, his real secret, isn't about survival, but about building a mind that's, well, bulletproof? Okay, let's get into the philosophy of a man who turned a life-shattering accident into a guide for mental strength.
It all comes down to this one moment, a single moment suspended between the sky and the ground, a moment that went horribly, terribly wrong, and in doing so ended up setting the course for the entire rest of his life.
So before he was this global icon, Grylls was a soldier in the UK Special Forces, and it was there that a totally routine jump became the very thing that would forge his entire worldview. He was on a free-fall parachuting exercise in Africa, and his chute, it just didn't open properly. The impact shattered his back, breaking 3 vertebrae. Just think about that. The doctors told him he might never walk again. I mean, that's a moment of absolute vulnerability that could have just ended everything right then and there. But, and this is the incredible part, this is where his story really begins. And if you look closely at this timeline, the most astounding detail is the time frame, 18 months. In just a year and a half, he went from a broken back to standing on top of the world. So how? How is that even possible? Well, it wasn't just his body healing, it was his mind being completely reforged.
That amazing comeback wasn't just some miraculous physical recovery. No, it was the result of a mindset that was built long before the accident, in the quiet and often difficult moments of his childhood. You know, the super confident adventurer we all see on TV? By his own admission, he was a kid who felt like he just didn't fit in. He wasn't the best at sports or school, and that feeling of being an outsider, it kind of forced him to look for a different kind of currency, a different way to prove his worth, not to others, but to himself.
And this is what led him to a whole new definition of confidence. It's not about being the loudest person in the room. He calls it quiet confidence. Think of it like a steady internal compass. It's the strength to say, wow, this is hard, and then just take the next step anyway, especially when nobody's watching. So here's the absolute key. Resilience isn't something you're born with. As Grylls says, it's a muscle. And how do you build a muscle? By failing. By getting knocked down and making the choice over and over again to get back up. You see, failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the training ground for it.
All right, this brings us to one of the biggest misconceptions about him. That image of the lone survivor is so powerful, but it's just not the truth. The real story is one of radical teamwork and a really unique style of leadership.
On screen, you see one guy against the wild. But the reality? There's a loyal, dedicated crew. The people behind the camera, facing the exact same dangers he is. He's never been alone in his success, and he is always the first one to admit it.
And this just says it all. It shows his humility. He calls his team ninjas and openly says they are better and stronger than him in so many ways. His success isn't his alone, it's the success of the whole pack. His leadership philosophy is actually pretty simple. Serve your team. He believes the leader's job is to empower others to carry the burden of their safety. This means being the first to face the hardship and the last to take the reward. See, true leadership isn't about command, it's about sacrifice.
Now, this is something I think a lot of us can relate to. Even with all his success, he admits he's in a constant battle with imposter syndrome. He often feels like he's just the guy trying to keep up. But instead of letting that doubt paralyze him, he uses it as fuel. He sees that vulnerability not as a weakness, but as a strength that keeps him humble and working hard.
So we've got resilience built from failure, and we've got leadership built on humility. But what's it all for? What's the point of climbing these mountains, both the literal ones and the metaphorical ones in our own lives? This brings us to the very core of his philosophy. All the external adventures are really just a training ground for the most important journey of all, the one that happens inside.
And here it is, the ultimate goal. For Grylls, true potential isn't about personal achievement. It's realized when we shift our focus from me to we. When we start serving a purpose that's so much bigger than our own survival or success.
So, what can we take away from all this? The blueprint is pretty clear. First, lean into uncertainty. Second, reframe failure as your greatest teacher. Third, anchor yourself in a purpose that serves others. And when you do those things, you unlock the final step, discovering that the greatest adventure is the one within.
In the end, Bear Grylls' message isn't about surviving in the wild. It's about thriving in your life. He's suggesting that the most important summit to climb, the most dangerous river to cross, isn't out there in the world. It's right here, in the quiet spaces of the human heart. The only question is, are you ready for that adventure?